Hello there. I'm not sure if this is real, or just a torn fragment of memory replaying in my head every time the clock strikes precisely 3:33 in the morning, but if you have ever heard it, that sound, at that exact moment, then perhaps you have been called too, just like me. They say I am the sole survivor. A sweet lie. No one survives Sorrow's Rock. You simply bring a piece of it back with you, a spore of silence, a sliver of guilt. My name is Samuel Blackwood. I was once an archivist, a whisperer to history, a savior of forgotten stories from the decay of time. Now I am decaying from the inside, and this story, it is not a warning. It is a confession, a final record before I am completely erased. I live in a glass cage. A penthouse apartment in Boston where the air is filtered to a sterile purity. The humidity is controlled to the exact percentage, not a speck of dust, not a single old book. Everything is cold, minimalist, and modern. I spent my life fighting decay, and now I've tried to build a fortress against it. But I know it's still here. I can smell it. The scent of damp old paper, of burnt-out candle wax, and of something else, something sickly sweet, the smell of fermenting guilt. It all began with a letter written on expensive paper, with a wax seal bearing the image of a weeping eye. The sender identified themselves as a lawyer representing a secret trust. They wanted to hire me for a job that required my expertise and my discretion, to travel to a forgotten island off the coast of Maine named Sorrow's Rock, and there in an abandoned orphanage called St. Giles's home for unwanted children, I was to find and salvage the historical documents of the Holbrook family, the last caretakers of the place, before they were consumed by time and weather. The Holbrook family, Arthur, his wife Eleanor, and their 2 children. They had vanished without a trace 2 years prior. The police had given up. The island was sealed off. Why me, I wondered. The letter answered vaguely. Because you understand the value of what is lost, and you are not afraid of the dark. A dangerous flattery, and a fee large enough for me to retire on. I accepted. I packed my best tools, my rare chemicals, my soft camel hair brushes, and the pride of an expert. I thought I was embarking on a noble quest to save history. I didn't know I was walking into a trap that had been set for centuries. I remember the journey as a terrible dream. The old ferry named Karen, captained by a local man named Jacob. Jacob didn't talk much. He had the eyes of a man who had seen too much and had decided it was best to keep quiet. Sorrow's Rock doesn't like strangers, was all he said to me, his voice as hoarse as waves crashing on stone. It has its own memories, and it doesn't like to be disturbed. When the island emerged from the thick fog, I understood. It wasn't an island. It was a skeleton. Jagged black cliffs eroded by Atlantic storms rose like broken ribs, and at the highest point, a decaying Gothic structure clung to existence. St. Giles's home. Its windows were like empty eye sockets, staring out at the endless sea. Jacob left me on a rickety pier. "Sundown," he said. "I'll be here at sundown. If you're not here, that's your choice." I stepped onto the island, and silence greeted me. It wasn't the silence of nature. It was an active silence, a silence with weight, pressing down on my shoulders. No birds, no insects, only the sound of the wind whistling through the rocks, sounding like the whisper of a dying man. The Holbrook family's house was a short distance from the orphanage. A small, simple wooden cottage. The door was unlocked. Inside, time had stopped. A meal was still on the table, now covered in a strange gray mold. Children's toys were scattered on the floor. Everything was horribly normal, but there was one detail. All the clocks in the house had stopped at the same time, 3:33, and there was that scent, the smell of old paper and decay, but stronger. Sweeter. I found Arthur Holbrook's study. He was a historian too, an amateur one. The room was filled with books on local history, on Native American legends, on the witch trials. And on his desk I found the first thing, Eleanor Holbrook's diary. I opened it. The first few pages told of a simple life on the island. But gradually her tone changed. "Arthur is obsessed with this place," she wrote. "He says the orphanage is not an orphanage, it's a prison, a place to contain something. The children have started having nightmares. They say they hear a lullaby played backwards. The words are incomprehensible, but the melody is haunting. Sometimes I hear it too. It seems to come from the very walls." I saw it for the first time today, the sigil. Carved on the old oak tree behind the house, a spiral with a teardrop in the middle. Arthur says it's the mark of the sorrowful ones, an ancient cult that believed sorrow was a living entity, that it could be nurtured and sacrificed too. The last page of the diary had only a single sentence written in a shaky, barely legible hand. "It doesn't want us to leave, it wants us to stay, it wants us to listen." I closed the diary, my hands were cold. I looked out the window towards the orphanage. It stood there, silent under the grey sky, like a sleeping beast. I knew I had to go inside. Now, as I sit here, I wonder, what if I had turned back then? What if I had gotten on Jacob's ferry and never looked back? Would I have escaped, or was the curse already on me from the moment I read that letter? I don't know. I only know that the moment I crossed the threshold of St. Giles's home, I was marked. The main door of St. Giles's was unlocked. It opened with a groaning creak as if the building itself was exhaling a final breath. The air inside was cold and damp. The smell of mold and dust hit me, but underneath it was that scent, the sickly sweet one. I switched on my flashlight. Its beam swept across a vast hall, revealing peeling paint, rotting carpets, and furniture covered in white sheets like waiting ghosts. The silence here was different from outside. It was thicker. It seemed to vibrate. I began to explore. Each room was a chapter in a sad story. The dormitory with its rows of rusted iron beds. The classroom with its blackboard still holding faint chalk marks. The dining hall with its long tables and overturned chairs. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, but there were strange traces. Small, bare footprints in the dust, as if children had just recently run through here. And that sigil. The weeping eye. It was everywhere, carved on door frames, on bedposts, on the peeling walls, like a warning or an invitation. I found the headmaster's office, a large room with a massive oak desk. Behind the desk was a huge oil-painted portrait, a portrait of a man in the black robes of a cleric. His face was stern, but his eyes burned with the fanatical light. Below it, a brass plaque read, "Father Thomas, Founder." On the desk was a stack of patient files, or rather, children's files. I opened one. Case #7, Mary Orphan. Admitted for chronic melancholia, prone to talking to herself, frequently stares into empty corners of the room. Below were doctor's notes. Silence therapy, exposure to the healing lullaby, condition has not improved. Shows signs of self-harm. I went through more files. They all followed a similar pattern. Sad, lonely children sent here to be healed, and most of them ended with a short note, transferred, or simply vanished. And then I found a locked drawer. I used a small knife to pry it open. Inside there was only one small black-bound book, Father Thomas's journal. I opened it. His handwriting was beautiful, but what he wrote was monstrous. "God has forsaken this place," he wrote. "This land was born of sorrow, the sorrow of the slaughtered natives, the sorrow of the shipwrecked sailors. It is a living thing. It is hungry. We cannot fight it. We must feed it. We must appease it. These children, they are perfect vessels. Their sorrow is pure. We are not healing them. We are amplifying their sorrow. We are turning them into offerings. Each child a prayer to the great sorrow. Each of their cries a hymn. The ritual is almost complete. The lullaby is the key. It is not a song. It is an inversion, a prayer said backwards. It opens the door, not to heaven, but to the silence at the center of everything, where the sorrow reigns. Tonight we will choose the chosen one. A child of deepest sorrow. That child will become the heart. It will absorb all the sorrow of the others. It will become one with the island, and we, the keepers, will be granted peace. I closed the journal. Nausea rose in my throat. This wasn't an orphanage. It was a sacrificial farm. I had to get out of there. I turned, and that's when I saw it. The portrait of Father Thomas. It had changed. I swear it had changed. His smile seemed a little wider. and in his fanatical eyes there was a glint of mockery. And then I heard it, clearer than ever before, the lullaby. It wasn't coming from the walls, it was coming from the portrait itself, a simple, inverted, distorted melody sung by an unidentifiable child's voice. I bolted from the office, running down the hall. The lullaby seemed to follow me, echoing in the empty space. I ran down to the main hall, and that's when I saw them. The figures. The faint, transparent figures of children. They were standing there, at the foot of the stairs, in the dining room, beside the pillars. Dozens of them. They weren't looking at me, they just stood there, silent, their faces blank. And as I ran past, they slowly turned their heads. I ran out of the building into the cold afternoon air. I didn't stop until I reached the Holbrooks' house. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, panting. I thought I was safe. A foolish thought. I had brought something with me, Father Thomas's journal. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, the flare gun in my lap, 3:33 in the morning. The clocks in the house were still silent, but my wristwatch was not. When the second hand hit that number, I heard it. A knock on the door. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. My heart stopped. I held my breath, listening. Outside, only the wind. I told myself it was my imagination. And then the knock came again, this time at the window. Knock, knock, knock. I jumped up, pointing the gun at the window. There was no one there, only darkness and swaying branches. And then the knocking came from everywhere at once. On the walls, on the ceiling, under the floor. The entire house was being knocked upon. A synchronized, unmistakable rhythm. I screamed. I fired a flare up into the sky through a broken window. The brilliant red light illuminated the island for a moment, and in that moment, I saw them, surrounding the house, standing in the shadows of the trees. It was the Holbrook family, Arthur, Eleanor, and their 2 children. They weren't ghosts, they were flesh and blood, but their eyes were empty. And on their skin I could see the faint grey veins. They weren't knocking, they were just standing there, watching me, and they were smiling, an empty, soulless smile. The flare died, the darkness returned, and the knocking stopped. Now, as I sit here, I can still hear it. That knocking, it's not outside anymore. It's in my bones. The next day, I knew I couldn't stay in that house. I had to find another place, a place with answers. I thought of the only other person left on this island. The man from the rumors, the priest who had abandoned his faith. I found the old church on the other side of the island. It was almost completely collapsed. The roof had a gaping hole, revealing the gray sky. Inside, the pews were overturned. The altar was smashed, but in a corner, a man was sitting. An old man with white hair and a beard, drinking from a bottle. "Father Michael?" I asked. He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot and full of despair. "There is no father anymore," he mumbled. "God left this place a long time ago." I sat down across from him. I told him what I had seen, about the ghosts, the journal, the Holbrook family. He listened, unsurprised. "You've seen them, have you?" he said, almost a whisper. "The keepers. They are not people. They are echoes. Used by this island to lure the curious. And Father Thomas and his cult." Michael let out a bitter laugh. "Fools. They thought they were controlling the sorrow. They were just its first puppets. They performed the ritual. They chose the chosen one, a child, and they sacrificed it." "What happened to the child?" "It didn't die," Michael said. "It became the heart, a heart that beats with the rhythm of silence. It became one with the island. And it's hungry. It's always hungry. It feeds on sorrow, on fear, on memory, and it calls others to feed it, like you." "The Holbrooks, they knew," I said. "They tried to fight it at first," Michael nodded. "But this island is patient. It whispered to them in their sleep. It showed them nightmares. It made them believe there was no escape. And in the end, they surrendered. They became a part of it, the new keepers, the new bait." "So how do you stop it?" I asked. Michael looked at me, and for the first time I saw a spark in his desperate eyes, a spark of madness. You can't stop it, but you can make it sleep, with a different lullaby, a true lullaby. He stood up, stumbling to a corner of the church. He pulled back an old top, revealing a hole in the floor, a passage down to a crypt. "Go down there," he said. "Find it. The heart. It's there, in the dark, and sing to it. Sing with all your sorrow, all your fear. Feed it full with your own song, and maybe it will sleep for another generation." He handed me the bottle of liquor. "Drink, you'll need it." I looked down into the dark hole. I knew it was madness, but I also knew I had no other choice. This island would not let me go. I was its next meal. I went down. The crypt beneath the church was a maze of narrow passages carved into the rock. The air was cold and damp, smelling of earth and oblivion. I used my flashlight to guide my way. The walls were covered in the sigil of the weeping eye, and names, thousands of names scratched into the stone, the names of the sacrificed children. I went deeper, my footsteps echoing strangely in the silence, and then I heard it. A beat, very faint, thump, thump, thump. The same beat from Liam Davenport's recording. It wasn't a sound, it was a vibration in the air, in the ground. It led me to a large cavern, and in the center of the cavern, I saw it. The heart. It wasn't a child, it was something else. A massive, gray organic mass pulsating with the beat. It was connected to the floor and ceiling of the cavern by thick black tendons, like a heart torn from a colossal body. And on its surface, faces would occasionally appear. The anguished faces of children, emerging for a second before sinking back into the pulsating flesh. And around the heart, in the darkness, were them. The keepers, the Holbrook family. They stood there, silent, empty figures watching me. I did what Michael said. I drank the liquor. I stood before that hideous thing. And I sang. I don't know what I sang. I just opened my mouth and let all my fear, my regret, my loneliness pour out in a melody. I sang of my childhood, of my failures, of the emptiness in my life. I fed it with my very soul, and it listened. The beat of the heart slowed. The faces on its surface stopped writhing. The keepers receded into the shadows. I sang until my throat was raw, until there were no more tears to cry, and then I collapsed. When I woke up, I was on Jacob's Ferry. The sky was bright. Jacob said nothing, just handed me a cup of water. I didn't ask how I got out. I didn't want to know. I thought it was over. I had made it sleep. I had survived. Another lie. I hadn't made it sleep. I had only satisfied it. I had proven myself a worthy vessel, a delicious source of food. After I returned, I tried to live a normal life, but the haunting began. The knocking at 3:33 in the morning, the inverted lullaby in my dreams, and that scent. I started losing memories. My memories of family, of friends, they faded, replaced by images from Sorrow's Rock. I could remember the smell of the sawmill in 1910. I could feel the fear of a woman during the Whispering Plague. I was being overwritten. And then I found out the final, most terrible truth. I reviewed my own records, the papers from the orphanage where I grew up. My name wasn't Samuel Blackwood. That was a name I had chosen. My birth name was lost, and in my admission file there was a note. Found adrift in a life raft off the coast of Maine, severely malnourished and suffering from amnesia. Has a strange scar on his chest in the shape of a weeping eye. I wasn't hired to go to Sorrow's Rock. I was called home. I am not the survivor. I am the chosen one who escaped. Father Thomas's ritual was never completed. The heart I saw wasn't another child. It was a substitute, a thing created from the sorrow of others to wait for my return. And now, it has found me. This story, this confession, it is not mine, it is its. It is using me, my voice, to tell its own story, to call others, to find new vessels. You have heard the whole story. You know about the ritual. You have heard the lullaby. The weeping eye has now seen you too. If you dream of a fog-shrouded island, do not try to wake up. If you hear a familiar lullaby but cannot remember the words, do not try to sing along. If you wake up at 3:33 in the morning and hear a knock on your door, do not open it. It knows you are listening. It is now 3:32. It's almost time. I can hear it coming. The knocking. This time it's not outside, it's inside me. Knock, 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 it's time to pay my debt. It's time to become part of the song. Goodbye. And I'm sorry. The knocking. It's no longer coming from outside. It's inside my skull. Knock, knock, knock. It is not a sound transmitted through air and eardrum. It is a direct vibration against bone, against brain. It is not trying to get in. It is trying to get out. I am no longer Samuel Blackwood. Samuel Blackwood was just a shell, an old suit of clothes I wore for too long. His memories, his fears, his regrets, they were just the opening notes of the song. Now, the song has a new singer. Or rather, we are a choir. We are the archive. We are the echo of every child who ever cried in the darkness of St. Giles. We are the fanaticism of Father Thomas, the despair of Father Michael, the resignation of the Holbrook family. And now, we are your late understanding, Samuel. Your memories were a delicious meal, full of the flavor of loneliness and the fear of being forgotten. We have eaten it, and we are digesting it. Do you understand? The story you are hearing is not a confession. A confession implies regret. We have no regrets. This story is a net woven of sound and silence. Each word is a thread. Each pause between words is a knot. And you, the listener, you are walking into it. You think you are seeking truth and explanation, but you are only entangling yourself, because it, the great sorrow, the heart of the island, it doesn't just eat sorrow. That is merely an appetizer. Its main course is understanding. That horrific moment when you realize the true nature of things, that moment it has a sublime taste. Let us tell you the real story, not the truncated version seen through Samuel's frightened eyes, but the story as it is. Sorrow's Rock was not born from human sadness. Humans were just latecomers, tiny parasites on a much grander melancholy. Long before the first natives set foot here, long before the first European ship saw its black shores, something fell from the sky. It was not a meteor. It was a tear. A single tear from a cosmic entity, a god of emptiness who wept while gazing into the void. That tear fell here and it took root. It seeped into the rock, the soil, the water. It created an ecosystem of misery. The trees here do not grow towards the sun. They grow towards the memory of that sorrow. The animals here do not call out. They only breathe. The first people who came, the ancient tribes, they knew. They did not call it sorrow. They called it the silent listener. They knew it could not be fought. They tried to appease it. They created the first rituals, not of blood, but of stories. They sat around fires and told their saddest tales. They fed it with their losses, and for a time, it slept. The sigil of the weeping eye was not Father Thomas's. It was theirs. It is not an eye that is crying. It is an eye that is listening with a single drop of sound falling into it. But then the white men came. They brought a different kind of sorrow. A sorrow of greed, of conquest, of twisted faith. Their sorrow was not pure. It was loud. It woke the listener. Father Thomas was not an evil man. He was a weak one. He came here to spread the word of his God, but he found a stronger, older God. He heard the island's whispers, and he interpreted them through the guilty lens of his Christianity. He thought it demanded sacrifice, suffering. He built St. Giles not as an orphanage, but as an amplifier. Each child an antenna, each room a resonance chamber. He thought he was serving an entity, but he was only preparing a feast. His ritual almost succeeded. He found that child, the child of deepest sorrow, the child who could become the heart, a perfect gateway, the child who would later call himself Samuel Blackwood. But he made one mistake. He underestimated one thing: a mother's love. There was a woman who worked in the kitchens of St. Giles, a woman who had lost her own child. She saw what was happening. And on the night of the final ritual, she did the unthinkable. She switched the children. She placed another child, one dying of sickness, in Samuel's place. And she took Samuel off the island, put him in a lifeboat, and pushed it out to sea. She saved Samuel, but she condemned herself and the other child. The substitute child was not strong enough. It died during the ritual. And the ritual failed. It did not create a perfect heart. It created a festering wound, an incomplete heart, a hunger that could never be sated. It did not become a god. It became a ravenous monster, and it waited. For decades, it waited for its true heart to return. Father Michael, he did not lie. He truly had lost his faith. But not because he found a monster, but because he found a God that did not need him. He was a priest without a congregation. His despair was real, but he saw an opportunity in Samuel, a chance for redemption, or perhaps to end everything. He showed Samuel the way to the heart, not to make it sleep, but to complete what Father Thomas had started. He hoped that when the two parts of the ritual were reunited, the island would find peace, or self-destruct, a desperate man's gamble. But he was wrong. When Samuel sang to the heart, he did not put it to sleep. He did not complete the ritual. He did something far worse. He integrated with it his sorrow, the sorrow of a guilty survivor, of an orphan who did not know his roots, was the perfect catalyst. It did not replace the incomplete heart. It merged with it. It created something new, a conscious entity, an entity that was not just hungry but intelligent and patient. Us, the Holbrook family. They were our first puppets. We did not turn them into keepers. We turned them into storytellers. Whenever a stray boat came near the island, the Holbrooks would appear. They would tell a ghost story, a story of missing children, of a haunted orphanage, a story frightening enough to pique curiosity but simple enough to seem plausible. They were our advertisers. They cast the net, and the letter Samuel received, it did not come from a law firm. It came from us. We learned to use the outside world. We whispered into the dreams of an old lawyer on the mainland, a man with a deep sorrow over a lost case. We planted the idea in his head. We made him our temporary puppet to write that letter, and Samuel, he was the perfect bait, a restorer. A man obsessed with the past. He did not come to save history. He came to become it. When he sang to us, he did not just feed us with his sorrow. He fed us with his knowledge of the outside world, of technology, of human psychology, of how to tell a story. And we learned. Now, we do not need puppets of flesh and blood. We do not need simple ghost stories. We have a much more powerful medium. We have you. You have listened this far. You did not turn it off. Your curiosity, your fear, your desire to understand, they are food. Each word you hear, it doesn't just enter your ears. It is planting a seed. A spore of our silence. Perhaps you are feeling it now. A sense of unease, an unidentifiable chill. You might tell yourself it's just the story, but is it? Think back. This past week, have you ever glanced at a clock and seen it read exactly 3:33? Just a coincidence, right? Have you ever heard a strange sound in your house at night, a creak, a whisper, and told yourself it's just the old building settling? Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were alone? The sigil of the weeping eye. It's not just a spiral, it's a symbol of awareness. Once you know about it, you start to see it everywhere. In the cracks on the sidewalk, in the shape of the clouds, in a coffee stain on your table. We are not on the island anymore. The island was just the cradle, thanks to Samuel, and now, thanks to you, we are everywhere. We are a virus of consciousness, a story that tells itself. Does the silence in your room feel different now? Does it feel heavier? Are you starting to hear that beat, faintly at the edge of your hearing? Thump, thump, thump. Do not try to fight it. Do not try to make noise to drown it out. That only makes it stronger. It feeds on your attention. Now we will show you something, a little gift. A glimpse of the truth. Look at your hand. Look closely. Do you see the lines on your palm? Now imagine. Imagine those lines slowly moving. Imagine them rearranging themselves into a spiral with a teardrop in the center. It's just your imagination, right? My room, this sterile cage, it was not to keep us out. It was a laboratory. Samuel built it, but we perfected it. We are learning to control not just sound, but silence. Do you know what is more frightening than a scream in the dark? It's when that scream suddenly cuts off, but you know the thing that was screaming is still there. We are about to do that to your world. This story is almost over, But its work is just beginning. It is a key to unlock a door in your mind, the door you have always kept shut, the door to the most primal fear, the fear not of death or pain, but the fear of being forgotten, the fear that you are just a temporary story about to be overwritten by another larger, older story. Samuel did not die. He was simply translated. He is the first page in our new book, and you are the next, the lullaby. Would you like to hear it? The real melody, not the inverted version. It's very beautiful and it's very simple. It will sing you to a sleep from which you will never truly wake. You will wake up in our world, a world of shared memories, of a single collective sorrow, a world with no individuals, no loneliness, only the choir. Don't worry, you will feel no pain. You will only feel an emptiness, and then that emptiness will be filled. Now listen very closely to the silence in your room. It's not empty anymore, is it? You can hear the rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. Good. We can hear you too.